One of the things we're most proud of doing this year is helping to launch the Harvard Law School Access to Justice Lab. The lab, as we describe in an issue of the practice, is really an innovative way to think about one of the oldest and most important problems in the American legal system, and that is that the vast majority of people here in the United States, and frankly, the vast majority of people in the world, have no meaningful access to justice. And yet, our legal system is based on the principle carved above the Supreme Court of the United States, equal justice under law. And it really is a mockery of that ideal when we look at the reality of what most people's access to justice is. The A2J Lab's mission is to try to find innovative ways to close that gap. And it starts with the idea that we are never going to close the gap if the only way we think about closing it is to provide a lawyer for everybody who needs one for every legal problem or potential legal problem. There simply will never be enough lawyers and never be enough money to pay for them. So instead, everyone is trying to experiment with new kinds of intervention that will allow people to get basic access to legal services and their legal rights while figuring out which are the kinds of problems and the kinds of proceedings in which a lawyer is really necessary and really adds real value. The Access to Justice Lab tries to test that proposition in a rigorous way by importing something that's very common outside of law, which is almost non-existent in law, which is the idea of a randomized controlled trial, trying to look seriously and rigorously at two different ways of addressing a problem in a way that randomizes who gets which intervention and controls for the results in a way that gives us confidence which one is actually better. At the moment, the A2J Lab has a number of these RCTs, as they call them, up and running in a number of different areas, which you can read about in the issue of the practice. One is on consumer debt, one of the most important areas where, quite frankly, victory is just getting people to respond to the debt summits and not default, which is what 99% of people do. Another is about intimate partner violence. Another is about the utility of having a lawyer for the day program, as many courts do. The A2J Lab is both looking at existing interventions and creating its own, but subjecting all of them to this rigorous way of thinking. We think that there's tremendous promise in that, and that promise will only increase as we get more ways of harnessing technology and big data and process management and paraprofessionals to think about how we can make those words on top of the Supreme Court real. We think some of the most exciting things that we are following moving forward are entrepreneurs, some of whom are right here as our students at Harvard Law School, who are looking for ways to harness the tools of technology, social media, big data, process management, paraprofessionals, self-help, the internet, YouTube, videos, a whole range of ways in which entrepreneurs are trying to provide real means of achieving access for ordinary individuals, not just the very poor, but the 90% of people who have no meaningful access to legal services. When these interventions are made, it will then be up to the kind of rigorous testing that the A2J Lab does to help us to see which of these are providing real value that we should invest in, and where we really need the help of a trained lawyer in the traditional way. We think this is very exciting, and we hope to have some exciting things to report back to you on in the coming year.